Time for the latest earnings outlook now with Research Director Shiraz Mian.
Shiraz, is this earnings season going to be a pivotal one in terms of how the stock market performs as a result of what's announced?
Yes, it is. I strongly feel that we have finally reached the stage where stock market investors need to take notice of what's happening on the earnings front. For more than 2 years now, while the market and the broad indexes have been going up, the trend, persistent trend, I must add, on the revisions front has been negative. We saw that with the Q3 earnings season. In fact, I have a slide to share with viewers here. This shows how estimates for Q3 evolved as the quarter unfolded. At the beginning of the calendar quarter in late June, early July, the estimate was for earnings growth in excess of 6%, and it's now expected to be up about 1.6%. Nothing strange or unique about this trend of negative revisions that we saw in Q3. We have been seeing this quarter after quarter for more than 2 years now, and typically you would expect stocks to follow that trend, stock prices to follow that trend. We haven't really seen that. Other factors and other forces have been pushing stocks higher. My sense is that if it's not Q3, the Q3 earnings season that has gotten underway already, then we are very close to the point where investors have to take account of what's happening on the earnings front.
You've been quoted in print as saying that the Q3 season is going to actually give us the true lay of the land as far as the earnings picture is concerned. What does that mean?
What I mean by that is that the first 2 quarters of 2014 had some unusual elements that affected the growth rate and the overall earnings performance in those quarters. Q2 was fairly good in terms of growth rate, in terms of surprises, and the big contributor to that improved performance was the bounce back that we saw from the extremely low levels where profitability had fallen in Q1, which, as you would recall, was really held down by weather and all those issues. So we had the weather issue in Q1, we had the bounce back in Q2. We don't have any such problems, issues, one-off events in Q3. So this is a quote-unquote normal earnings season, which will give us a true underlying trend on what's happening on the earnings front.
No outside impacts.
That's right.
So what do you expect to be some of the hardest hit sectors this season?
Yeah, the negative revisions trend that I showed here has been extremely broad-based. I have another slide which gives you the summary view of the earnings picture: 1.6% earnings growth and 1.8% revenue gains, significantly lower growth rate relative to what we saw. And the negative revisions were broad-based. So 14 of the 16 Zacks sectors had estimates cut as the quarter unfolded. The hardest hit, as you can see over here, finance, retail, autos, energy has been, as we know, the decline in oil prices. So the list of companies that have been hardest hit is fairly long. Finance got into negative, and as you know, finance is the largest earnings contributor in the S&P 500. A big driver of the negative revision in finance, though I must add, was Bank of America, which had that big settlement with the Department of Justice, and as a result of that has a roughly $4 billion swing in earnings in Q3 from positive earnings into negative. So the list of sectors that are laggards is fairly long.
What about the flip side, though? What about the positive?
Not much on the positive side. Most of the sectors have flat to very modest growth. The ones that have some growth, construction is one, transportation is one, business services is good. Even there, the growth pace is decelerating from the trends we have been seeing earlier.
So all told, when the dust settles on the Q3 season, are you expecting solid profits or not?
I hate that on the one hand versus on the other hand analysis, but I can't escape doing something like that. And I have a chart to show viewers what I mean by that. This chart shows you the total level of earnings that are expected in Q3. And as you could see, it's an estimated $267.1 billion in the quarter. It's down from $282.2 billion that we earned in the second quarter, which was an all-time record. But since companies typically beat 2/3 of them, my assumption would be that the final tally for Q3 will be very high. Bottom line, what I'm trying to show from this chart is that the overall level of corporate earnings is very high. So if you are going by the dollar totals of earnings, it is pretty solid. The problematic part is in this chart, where we have the issue of growth. We don't have much growth, 1.6% this quarter. Q2 was a bounce back, as we discussed earlier. And then there are these fairly optimistic expectations for the following quarters. So 7.3% growth in Q4. What I would call a solid or proper earnings season would be if the 7.3% growth rate expected for Q4 will hold up. We haven't really seen that play out for quite some time. If we see the trend that we showed earlier of negative estimate revisions, and the 7.3% growth rate drops to half of this pace or even more, given the growth worries that everybody has been talking about, Germany, Japan, China, then it's hard to call the earnings picture solid or even good. I would characterize it as broadly subpar and inconsistent with the strength we have been seeing in the stock market, notwithstanding the pullback we have been seeing in recent days.
Interesting. All right, we'll check back with you a couple of times during the season. In the meantime, if you would like to keep an eye on latest earnings trends, latest thinking on this earnings season for Q3 that Shiraz has, look at his earnings trends written commentary on Zacks.com. Every Monday you can find an earnings preview. In other words, what he expects to unfold for the week as far as earnings are concerned on our website as well. And then in his Ahead of Wall Street column that's also on Zacks.com, you can link to it right off the homepage, he'll give you the day-to-day nuances and his changes of thinking based on what happens day to day in the earnings season. A lot of information there for you to review during all earnings seasons on Zacks.com. With Shiraz, I'm Terry Ruffalo.